Hello, Gold participants from around the world. I'm Fleur Bickford, Program Director and MC for Gold Learning. I'm chatting today with Dr. Amy Brown about her upcoming keynote presentation for GOLD Lactation 2017 titled Breastfeeding as a Public Health Issue, Do We Have the Right Approach? So Amy, welcome. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, before we start talking about your presentation, which I am very excited about, perhaps you can tell our delegates a little bit about yourself and why this topic is important to you.
Okay. When I think about my research, I have to think that 10, 11 years ago, I knew absolutely nothing about breastfeeding. I just started a PhD at Swansea. It was meant to be about research on feeding older children. I was interested in nutrition, I was interested in children, but feeding babies, that was just straightforward, wasn't it? You either formula fed them or you breastfed them. They were equal choices, but somehow I'd picked up information that you fed them to a schedule every 4 hours, and that was pretty much all I knew about feeding babies. I was 22, 23. Wasn't planning babies for years to come. About a week after starting that PhD, I realised I was pregnant with my first baby. And that absolutely changed my life, as it does to us all, but it really changed my research as well, because I kind of stumbled into this unknown world that was happening to all these mothers and all these babies. And it was something nobody seemed to understand, because there was I with my straightforward decision that, you breastfed them, you bottle fed them. By this point, the midwife had said to me, breast is best. And I was going to breastfeed. But I kept meeting all these women who would say, oh, I didn't have enough milk, or I couldn't feed him, or he just fed too much, he just didn't take to it. And in the area I was living, we had really, really low breastfeeding rates, and I hadn't met anybody who was breastfeeding. And I just thought, this is really, really strange. Why on earth would something that we know is biologically normal not work for so many women? And I started to chat to more women and explore more, had the baby, experienced so much stuff, and, well, let's just say I changed my PhD research topic, and 12 years later, the rest is history, really. And I've spent the last 12 years now really exploring what that issue is, because it can't be explained just by so many women having a biological problem. Something else has to be going on. You only have to look at levels in different countries to know that something is not right. And that's what I spend my days doing when I'm not arguing on the internet with people.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Amy. It's always fascinating to hear how our speakers, get into their area of expertise. And I love hearing that your baby changed your direction with your PhD. So
I then had another 2 babies during my PhD, which I think just about finished off my PhD supervisors. But we all survived. We're here to tell the tale. So.
Well, that's wonderful. So my next question for you is, what has been one of your biggest challenges in this area of research?
I think the biggest challenge, and also what's so wonderful about the area, is you're dealing with real people's lives. These are women who have had babies, who have often, when I talk to them, had difficulties. And there is so much emotion going on there. That emotion is what drives me to try and make things a better place for them, to try and understand what is going on with breastfeeding. Why are we having so much trouble? But at the same time, it is hugely emotional research. Some days I look at my colleagues in engineering working with bits of steel or something and think, oh, you don't know what is going on there. But so much gets thrown at me. Sometimes I get a lot of love, often I get a lot of hate. People transfer a lot of their own emotions onto me. But what often happens is I hear so many sad stories. And the irony in all of this is that my original undergraduate degree is in psychology. And I was all set up, I wanted to be a psychiatrist. Wanted to go into, mental health and helping people's problems. And I decided No, that area is far too emotional to go into. I'll go into research and I'll research breastfeeding. And I think to say that the emotion found me again, but it's a challenge, and you only have to look at the conversations that go on online every day, the sides that upset that is caused, those real deep issues of guilt. Women shouldn't have to feel this way, and I think that guilt, that regret, the fact that they have been let down by the system is really blocking us moving forward. So the emotion is just central to what I do. It's what I feel every day. It's the rewarding bit. It's the challenging bit. And I really want that to be removed from the equation, in that the negative emotion, the positives can stay. But we need to get through this, I think, to really make a move forward.
Yeah, so interesting, and I think that emotional component is just huge. I know for myself, when I was working in private practice, you do end up feeling like, along with being, in your case, a researcher, in my case, lactation consultant, you end up, you are, doing a lot of counseling. That was what I found when I was working with moms, it was a lot of counseling. And often before we could even address the breastfeeding issues, we had to deal with the emotional stuff first. And we had to talk through that and get through that before we could focus on the breastfeeding. So you're right, it is such an emotional area. So interesting.
It's so tied into their lives as well. It's often not just a breastfeeding problem. If they have a breastfeeding problem, they may also have a mother-in-law problem, or a partner problem, or a money problem, or a body image problem. It's so complex. But, we're working in the right area. Steel and engineering would be really boring comparatively.
Absolutely. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about what do you hope delegates will be able to take away from your presentation and take back to their own practices?
I think the key message in my presentation, in my research, in all the work I do, is that we have to stop treating breastfeeding issues as a woman's individual problem. We have to look at the wider society, the culture in which she's in, and we need to create her an environment that enables her to be able to breastfeed in it. I think it's almost criminal what we're doing at the moment, in that we're telling women, breast is best, you must breastfeed your baby, you should do it for X, Y, Z reason. We're really getting their hopes up, their desire to do it. We're really motivating them on that level. But then when it actually comes to it, we're directly letting them down, we're indirectly letting them down from the whole of the societal perspective. How we treat women in general, how we value or we don't value motherhood. We're not enabling them, and if we want to make a change, we have to solve this issue. We have to create a supportive environment. And I would say to any woman who is feeling guilty that she didn't breastfeed for long enough in her eyes, for any practitioner or supporter who is working with her, we need to take this guilt, we need to take the responsibility away from the individual woman and throw it at society, throw it at the government, throw it at people who can actually create something that will support women.
Okay, thank you so much for that, and really looking forward to hearing more about this in your presentation, as I'm sure our delegates are as well. As we finish up, I would love to just hear a little bit about what you're working on now. What's next for Dr. Amy Brown?
Dr. Amy Brown likes to do several things at once, I think. We've got lots going on at the moment. One of the big projects I'm working at, and we're hoping to turn it into a book that can help more women going forward. I've been doing research around the concept of breastfeeding trauma. Now, some people on the internet have shouted at me and say that I'm misusing the word trauma to describe, in my mind, how women feel if breastfeeding fails. But I believe it's fully appropriate word. Women are traumatized. They are feeling guilt, they are feeling regret, they are feeling let down, they're feeling anger. And the work I'm doing at the moment is trying to understand that. It's trying to understand exactly what triggers them, what makes them feel bad, and whether, from their perspective, there is any way where we can move forward promoting breastfeeding, talking about how wonderful it is, by causing them the least harm. So it's about how can we support women who have been let down, what can we do? And women have flooded to that research. I've been running a survey online, getting them to talk about their experiences, and I have about 3,500 responses from women who have been let down, and they've got some really, really good ideas. So this is my priority at the moment, trying to get over this very real feeling of guilt and anger women are experiencing.
Well, that sounds fascinating and I think really important area to be looking at. So very excited to hear more about that as you progress through your research. So thank you so much for sharing, and we appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.
Thank you.
So for our delegates who are listening, Amy will be kicking off GOLD Lactation 2017 with her keynote presentation titled Breastfeeding as a Public Health Issue, Do We Have the Right Approach? And that will be presented live on April 3rd. And that will be available free to the general public. You can check out the GOLD Lactation website at www.goldlactation.com to reserve your spot for that and check out the times. We do have 2 times during the day when Amy will be speaking live, and we look forward to having you there. Thanks so much, everyone. Bye for now.